Hello, everyone, to the latest episode of the Obligations of Memory podcast for the Jewish Culture and Holocaust Remembrance Group. Today, I'm honored to have my friend and colleague, Saul Pinczweski, with me. And Saul has written an amazing book about his life and his parents called Bergen Belsen to Brooklyn. I recommend it very highly, and you can get the book on Amazon. So welcome, Saul. Nice to have you with us today. And so why don't you give a little bit of a background on who you are, what your parents were all about, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, I'm a second generation Holocaust survivor. My parents were victims of the Holocaust. They met each other in concentration camp, and they were survivors of Auschwitz. My father was a survivor of Buchenwald as well. My mother was a survivor of Bergen Belsen. And I was born in Germany right after the war, where they actually had a romance in concentration camp, if you can believe that. And then they were able to get to each other. But I'm not going to really go into the concentration camp because we're gonna stick to what motivated me to write this book.
That's great.
And what motivated me to write this book was SOS, which I'll explain shortly. First, I'm going to give you a little scenario that I'm going to read, and then hopefully you'll get a little kick out of it. An Airbus 380 is on its way across the Atlantic. It flies consistently at 800 miles per hour at 30,000 feet when suddenly a Eurofighter with tempo Mach 2 appears. The pilot of the fighter jet slows down, flies alongside the Airbus, and greets the pilot of the passenger plane by radio. Airbus, boring flight, isn't it? Now have a look here. He rolls his jet on its back, accelerates, breaks through the sound barrier, rises rapidly to a dizzying height, and then swoops down almost to sea level in a breathtaking dive. He loops back up next to the Airbus, and he asks, "Well, how was that?" The Airbus pilot answers, "Very impressive. But now you look." The jet pilot watches the Airbus, but nothing happens. It continues to fly stubbornly straight with the same speed. After 15 minutes, the Airbus pilot radios, "Well, how is that?" Confused, the jet pilot asks, "What did you do?" The Airbus pilot laughs and says, "I got up, I stretched my legs, I walked to the back of the aircraft to use the washroom, then I got a cup of coffee and a chocolate fudge pastry." Now, the moral of the story is, when you are young, speed and adrenaline seems to be great. But as you get older and wiser, you learn that comfort and peace are far more important. This is called SOS.
Very good.
Slower, older, but smarter.
I think that's terrific. So now tell us why that makes why you said it and how does it get to your book?
Okay, well, now that I am SOS, slower, older, and smarter, it has motivated me to share what I have carried all of my years in my mind and heart about my folks and all the other Holocaust survivors. I feel the torches of their existence, the fire that seared their souls, the strength of spirit that mustered to rebuild their lives. We all thrive, and our children too, because of their great qualities: faith, compassion, perseverance, courage, brilliance, and vision. This is the path they have so valiantly cleared before us for our children and our people.
Really,
God bless them.
really nice. So you wrote this book. Tell us a little bit about your process.
The process was, I thought that, like 20 years ago, that it would be an interesting story. There were stories like Anne Frank and, other Holocaust survivors that had written books. But I thought that my book would be a little more different because my upbringing was really not typically Jewish. My parents had a candy store in Brooklyn, which was in a totally Italian neighborhood with some Irish, very, very, very few Jews. And, I was brought up in the back of the candy store because that's all my parents could afford. And it was an interesting experience in that I had like a second family that lived right behind the candy store, because the hours that my parents worked in the candy store were from like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning until like midnight. They would switch shifts. And the Fasaro family took an interest in me, and they had come into the store and invited me for Sunday dinners. Italians typically have a Sunday dinner with meatballs, spaghetti, and salad and pastries, and it was unbelievable. I enjoyed it. So basically, that was my bringing up until going to public school and learning that all the kids around me were going to have a communion. And when I came home and asked my mother when I was going to have my communion, she said, "Oya brach, was hat passiert zu mir," which means, "Oh my God, what happened here? My son doesn't even know he's Jewish, and look at all I've been through in my life." So she spoke to my dad, and they discussed that they need to send me to a Jewish school. Well, the closest Jewish school was 2 bus rides away. So my mother went and enrolled me. And, it's all in the book. I don't want to give away the whole book. So
Let's stop for a second. So you have, now when you started to think about this book 20 years ago, your mom was living, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did, in those days, I did cassette tapes with my mom, sat down and, taped everything with her. Most of the things in the candy store, I all knew, but the things she divulged to me were more heart-wrenching with regard to her experience in concentration camp. I mean, that was no picnic for her. But she was always a positive person. So she would always tell me, "Thank God I made it. Thank God for grandma." She had such faith in her grandma, and whenever she talked about her grandmother, she was like, so excited, to relive those stories with her grandmother.
So when you talked to her about the book, what was her feelings? Was she happy that you were going to write the book?
She was happy about it. I mean, obviously, her greatest joy was my 2 daughters. As far as the book, she did the interview for Steven Spielberg. She really had the family as the priority, and she just respected me for what I was trying to do, and she always knew that I was always someone that was trying to protect them and make sure that they were taken care of, and just like they tried to take care of me in their older age, I tried to take care of them as best as I could. I moved them from Florida to California, and so they actually they really enjoyed. My mother called California God's country. She said, "This is God's country." And
tell me a little bit about your father. So your father, I know about your mom. So tell us also about how your dad played into the story, and how he felt about the book.
My father was a very soft-spoken kind of guy, except when it came to like anti-Semitism, where he got all excited, which happened a lot in the candy store when someone would come in and say something like "Jew bastard" or something like that. My father would get irate. And we had a counter where, people would be served ice cream, sodas, coffee, whatever. Anyway, he jumped over the counter and, went and like started beating up on some of these Italian guys who were stupid enough to make those anti-Semitic statements. And, fortunately, there was a man that we call in the book the Gaon, which in Hebrew means the chief rabbi. And, in their minds, he was like a chief because he commanded a tremendous amount of respect. Little did they know that he was the consigliere of one of the crime families and a mafia boss. But, for some reason, he saw the tattooed numbers on my mother's arms, and he said to her, "I know what you've been through, and I'm going to make sure that you don't get hurt anymore." And he sure did. He sure did. And to some extent, he was my godfather. Most people have seen the movie The Godfather, but it was really an amazing experience to have someone who could be so compassionate, and yet on the other hand, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah. So tell me, how did your dad like the idea of you writing the book?
Yeah. He look, he really felt good about the fact that his family would be mentioned, because my mother always said that she was a much more jovial and cheerful person because she was an only child, so she really didn't lose all that much. And my father had 2 brothers, 2 sisters. He had a big family, and he lost all of them. And in the book, it also illustrates the fact that he lost his brother, who survived the Holocaust and tragically got struck by lightning in 1956 and died. And that was like destroyed him completely. He had a nervous breakdown, and that made life very, very difficult for my mom and myself, because he couldn't function very well. And here we had this candy store. But it was amazing how the people came in and helped, the people who actually helped to take us, because my uncle who was struck by the lightning, he had a chicken farm, which is what a lot of Holocaust survivors did. After they made some money, they went into rural areas, and they wanted to like live in a quiet existence after what they had gone through. And he lived in Vineland, New Jersey in those days, which was really rural. It was like the real sticks. And he raised chickens, and he would bring the eggs to a market, and that's how he made a living. And so when you're talking about, we were in a candy store in Brooklyn, and the phone rings in the middle of the night, and my mother answers the phone, which was in the candy store, because it was a phone booth. In those days, you dialed with the phone and you put 10 cents in to make the call. But, the people who called us, the phone would ring inside the candy store. So we'd run from the back of the candy store where we lived, and my mother answered the phone. And unfortunately, someone divulged to her that Uncle Max, or my Uncle Max, died. My father completely broke down. He started banging his head against the wall. And I was like terrified. My mother ran over, grabbed him, put him down on the bed, and he was shaking and he was really out of it. And, from there, he wanted to be able to go to the funeral and all the other things. And so my mother went into the bar, which was right next door to the candy store, which was a famous bar where, the Mafia hung out. It was the 19th hole. And of course, the bar is open, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And she went in and she said, "Oh no, what should I do? What should I do? My husband's brother passed away. He's having a nervous breakdown. We really need to go to New Jersey." We didn't have a car. Sure enough, the bartender, whose name was Charlie Chip, in those days, everybody had a name, you weren't just Joe. You were you were Joe the Killer. You were Balloons. He was the local bookmaker. Balloons. All these guys had names, that went along with their profession. So anyway, somebody in the bar, I think the guy's name was Rocky. Rocky drove us all the way from Brooklyn to Hamilton, New Jersey, where the farm was. It was an awful experience for me as a 8-year-old kid, and especially for my cousin, who was only a year older than me, 9 years old, that lost her dad, and it was just terrible. And the Holocaust survivors that came for the funeral, and the shroud that they put over the casket, they were all tearing at it and crying and screaming. It was awful. A terrible experience for me.
Let me move you off of that. So it took you 20 years to publish this book? So why so long?
Okay, so when I started, and I made these tapes, and my literary skills were not that great.
Let me ask you, what is your profession? I forgot to mention that.
I'm a dentist.
Okay.
I know the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth. So, so basically, when you're asking about my literary skills, my literary skills are writing up a chart on what exactly took place in the oral cavity. When it comes to, writing a book, I needed someone with more skills, more ability to write, and to put it into a very interesting format, so that it'd be comfortable for most people to read. And I was fortunate enough to come across Linda Rosenberg, who actually met my parents more than 20 years ago, listened to the tapes, interviewed with my parents, spent time with them, and she put down the story. And as she said during one of my broadcasts with the University of San Diego, she said the story almost wrote itself, because she had so much wonderful material to work with, and she was a prolific writer, and she put it down so accurately and so well. So
when was it published?
It was only published like about 2 years ago, because when she actually wrote the whole manuscript, and I took the manuscript at that time to Simon and Schuster, which was a big book writing company, and we have too many Holocaust stories. We're not that interested in it. And, I kind of, look, I was busy with other things in life. And it just, it just seemed to be like a big manuscript that I had on my bookshelf that just sat there. Well, about 2 years ago, Linda called me up and said to me, Saul, I just got back from Chicago, and I was at the University of Chicago with the literary department head, and I was there for a conference, and I happened to bring along the manuscript of our book. And I gave it out to a number of the people there, and most of them were recognized authors. They read the book and they said, I can't believe you never published this. This is wonderful. This is an unbelievable story. So she said to me, in the era now of self-publishing, I think we should think about publishing the book. So I said, well, I'll make some inquiries and see what I can do. In the meantime, I had more time on my hand as I retired from dentistry because of back problems. And Linda was still teaching English at the Jewish Academy. And so she really didn't have the time to make the effort to look into the self-publishing. Well, I was fortunate enough to run into a wonderful lady named Dee Desario, and she actually did her own self-publishing, and she was very helpful in getting me onto Amazon and to connecting me with the people that are involved. I'm not technologically advanced. I'm a dinosaur when it comes to the tech computer, but we needed people to organize the book for the format of Amazon. We needed somebody to include the pictures. It became a family project too, because my brother-in-law, Bill Cooper, is a big photography advocate, and he took all the old pictures and he tried to restore them and put them into the book. So, and created an album for them that I actually sent to you, Jeffrey. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, you said you weren't able to include them in the story.
Not yet. But let me ask you. So, we have a lot of authors in the group. Your book is from Bergen Belsen to Brooklyn. What have you learned about self-publishing that you would want to tell someone who is in your spot, who's trying to publish a book, has a family memoir, is really wanting to get it out? So what's the one or two things that you've learned from that?
Well, I think the easiest format is Amazon. And if some of the people in the group want to use some of the people that I have used, I would be more than happy to give them the information. That's how it came about for me.
So are you published on Kindle? Are you published on Kindle or also paperback?
Both Kindle and paperback. Yeah, there are many people that have read it on Kindle, and there are, I've been fortunate in that, I've had hundreds of people buy the book, and I'd also say hundreds on Kindle that have
So what are
read it on Kindle.
what are the top comments that you're getting from your book, if you can tell us?
Oh, you can actually go into the Amazon site and see the comments. They're all 5-star ratings, and
Anything that stood out to you that you want to share?
Well, yeah, I could. If you give me a minute, I'll go look for one of them that I found when I was doing a little bit of preparation for this podcast, which I thought was really very interesting, because this was someone who read the book before it was published. And I don't even know who it was. Linda had given the manuscript to this lady. And it's really, I came across it right before this. So if you bear with me, I'll go find it.
Take a second. Okay, so tell us what you're going to share with us.
Okay. All the positive reviews were wonderful on Amazon, which, if anyone just goes on Amazon, they can just read the reviews, which are all, like I mentioned, 5-star. But this was before the book was published a number of years ago. Okay, this is a very touched and grateful reader, was the way they warm regards. That's how they sent me this letter. Linda gave them my address. This came through U.S. Postal Service, not from email. Dear Helen, David, and Saul, for the past few hours, I was so engrossed in your book that I feel I know you and can therefore address you by your first names. The book had such an impact on me. I feel as if I want to know more and more and more. I felt a part of your pain, your stress, your intense hardships and horrible experiences. I have felt your joy at the birth of each child and wanted to know about your grandchildren and what happened to everyone in this story. Fortunately, I could talk to Linda and get some updates, but I was so sorry that the book ended. I also kept wishing I could see photographs of Helen, David, Saul, the candy store, and other personalities in the book, which we put into the book, which, her letter had an impact. I believe that it is our duty and privilege to read your book, to teach our children the wonderful lessons of life and also the very, very, very bitter realities. It is important for readers to travel your journey and then still see your positive, bright attitude to life. This book should be required reading for all young adults. These kids should be aware of what some people have endured and lived through and how they continue and manage to live honest, good lives and to raise wonderful children and to be such positive contributors to society. I wish you all health, happiness, and a lot of nachas. And nachas in Yiddish means that you should just continue to enjoy. The fact that you made the effort and probably had to relive many awful experiences was most commendable. I sincerely hope you get this book published so that many, many people could be touched by your special story in the way that I was. Your story is a meaningful gift to all future generations. Thank you for sharing this with all your readers and with me. Warm regards, a very touched and grateful reader.
Very nice. So let me ask you this question. We know each other very well. We both are part of a second generation group here in San Diego called San Diego Generations of the Shoah. And you are one to give everything to the group. So tell us a little bit how you got involved in the Yiddish Club, because I want to tell our readers, our viewers that and listeners that Saul is the leader of the Yiddish Club. So tell us a little bit about your roles there.
Well, it became, I became friendly with people that have the same background, and I found out about, we're starting this second generation group, which kind of was an offshoot of the New Life Club, which my parents had attended for a while here in San Diego while they were alive. And the Holocaust survivors that actually lived in San Diego most of their lives. And I always enjoyed Yiddish. When I was younger, I kind of acted as someone who translated for my parents, because look, they had a real language barrier coming from Europe. Although my mother spoke like 4 languages, but English wasn't one of them. But she had the ability to learn English because she had that, I guess some people are geared to be able to know languages a lot easier. And she did come along with English, but English came easier to me as a kid because I was going to, pre-K, and, I was dealing with the United States, dealing with people that spoke English. So I was kind of like, I helped for the translation for them, and many things in the candy store as well. So Yiddish was something I always listened to because they spoke in Yiddish, as opposed to my brother, who was born more than 11 years later, because my mother had trouble conceiving me and she had trouble conceiving him. And also with the candy store was not an atmosphere for, for bringing up a kid in the back of the candy store. But, she did get pregnant. And my brother, when he was born into a house because we actually, had saved up enough money from the candy store to be able to put a down payment on a house and move to an area that was a lot more Jewish. And my brother got a kick out of Yiddish. And I wasn't going to divulge this, but I told my brother, just the other day, he's a prominent attorney in New York City, and he's been on many broadcasts in New York because he kind of takes after my mother with his personality and his ability to get inside of people, and he also tries to do the right thing. So, when somebody gets killed in jail, and and the place is called the Tombs, and he gets on TV and says that you're supposed to be incarcerated in tombs. You're not supposed to be put in a tomb. Which, although it's a little bit humorous, but it's pretty sad for the family. But he represented the family of the person that got hung, while the person who runs the jail says to the people that work in the jail, the guy threatened that he was going to hang himself, and the warden tells don't, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. Sure enough, he did it, and he killed himself. Yeah, well, warden, you're a schmuck. Well, anyway, it was a good case for my brother, along with many others. But anyway, I'm not here to broadcast for him. He can do it himself. he has a.
Tell us about the Yiddish Club.
Okay, well, anyway, what I was leading to is that he really has a real command of Yiddish, and we have an upcoming Yiddish class, and I asked him if he would join because his Yiddish is far better than mine, and the Yiddish Club, I really get a kick out of it, and most of the other people get a kick out of it. The problem with most people is that they understand it because they were listening to their parents speak it. But I think just like me, we all wanted them to speak English, and therefore we talked back to them in English. So we didn't really talk back to them in Yiddish. My brother spoke back to them in Yiddish, and he was like a master of, being in control of Yiddish. So he's had many scenarios where his Yiddish came in handy when, he was, working as a delivery guy for UPS. He heard some religious guys talking while he was having trouble with the boxes. And some guys were saying, "Gib a kick auf dem Goy, was tit, weiß nicht, was tit." Well, what that means in Yiddish means, take a look at that Gentile. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing with all those boxes and stuff. Well, my brother knew exactly what they were saying. So he went over to them and he said, he picked the guy up by his collar and he said, "You know what?" He would tell him in Yiddish, "As Mama gehört das du, es gehen a patch in the pisk," which means if my mother heard what you just said, she'd slap you right in the face. "That's Yiddish," the guy said to him. "Yeah, ich red Yiddish ganz gut," which means I speak Yiddish real well. So anyway, Yiddish is a precious language, and everybody kind of got a kick out of it when I would speak it, when we would go to like presentations or we would have get-togethers. And then we decided to start a Yiddish club. And Diane has been wonderful in, setting it up with the Zoom. And she also had us go to the clubhouse at her home, where we met at the clubhouse. And we would bring in food, and it would be a machaya. It means wonderful time to express the language of our people that traveled throughout Europe and throughout the world for centuries, and is very. It's not very well spoken in Israel, because Hebrew is the language of Israel, but still it's Mamalushin, it's mother tongue, it's what we love, and the people who do it with me once a month, they love it.
So I have a couple more questions for you, and then we'll bring this to an end. I want to know what your favorite candy was at the candy store.
Oh, my favorite candy. Well, I had two.
You can have two.
There were jelly royals, which had like a jelly inside with delicious chocolate on the outside. And in those days, and licorice. I loved licorice.
What year are we talking about?
We're talking about 1954 was when we took over the candy store. Okay. And I had, an assortment of candies that I could eat. And, the fact that I became a dentist is probably somewhat related to the candy, because from eating all that candy, I had to go to the dentist. And boy, did I have cavities, or caries, as it's termed.
Did you have a Jewish clientele at your with your practice?
Some. I had a mixed clientele. I had Italians, of course, because part of me is Italian. Capiche? I mean, I'm a little doozy pots. That means crazy in Italian. I got brought up between being a Catholic and being a Jew, so I'm confused. Ein bisschen Michigan device. This is the way I was brought up. So it's the way I came out.
Well, I think that's a great stopping point. So I thank you, Saul, for giving some of your time to us. Saul's book is terrific. It's From Bergen Belsen to Brooklyn. It is a tremendous read, funny, emotional. It'll bring you to tears and to laughs. And I strongly recommend that you go out and buy it on Amazon. And Saul, thank you very much.
And hey, thank you for the plug. You're great. I love you.
All right.